Hey guys, what's going on? Friday night and there's nowhere to go. Nowhere to go but to hang out. And actually, I was doing a bit of work, a bit of reach out, and doing a little bit of studying going on today. And actually, pretty productive day. I've got my list of things, got my to-do list done. So getting myself organized here on a daily basis. It's pretty important. And I find if I go through and I time block my day, it really makes a big difference. And time block it means I just take my day timer and I write in. I make little squares, and for like a 90-minute square, 2 hour square, and inside that space, I'll actually block off time. Um, I'll block off time, and then I'll write out what I want to do inside that time. If it's study, then what am I studying? And then I write the details of it in so it's more specific. Just try to be a little bit more, trying to be more productive with my time. And because I seem to have lots of time like everyone else. So, and I think when we're kind of out of routine, we tend to get thrown off a little bit. And it's easy to kind of just spin out of control and be super unproductive on lots of different levels, simply because our structure of time has been disrupted quite dramatically in the last little while. So yeah, so it was interesting. I'm taking this opportunity to go back and find things that I haven't completed. There was a I did a yoga certification when I was in Nicaragua with my son, and there's a series of there's exam questions. I finished all of them but two. There's some videos that I have, but I had never set them off, and just little things like that. So I made a point of actually sitting down and answering the last three questions and set them off. Just trying to find the videos and send that off. I did all the training. I just never finished that last little piece. And it's a process of, there's a risk to leaving things unfinished. Um, it's almost like it creates a deficit. It creates like a psychological deficit where the brain or your psychology, let's call it, your psychology gets in the habit of getting excited about the idea. So it's the inception, right? So we're excited about the idea and the possibility of something, right? Like reading a book. And we get started, and once we get started, we never follow through. And we kind of wonder and say, oh, I'm really bad at that. Well, yeah, but it takes practice. It takes practice to follow through. All those books behind me, and I've got boxes of books that I put away. The vast majority of them I've read. Some of them are reference manuals, so I just use them as when I need reference for particular things. Um, but to actually sit down and read something and take out a pen or a highlighter and go through and actually underline points and highlight points, and then sit down and think about it, and then maybe write about it. I'll blog about it. I'll do a video on something. I'm currently rereading this book here. That was a gift given to me several years ago. An extraordinary book, really, just such an amazing writer. Um, I hadn't read his stuff in a long time, and it's a series of stories, and he just really looks at God and the different ideas around God and what that looks like in different cultures, and share stories of different spiritual leaders and martyrs over history. Anyhow, just really extraordinary read. But to read it and think about it, and to think about it, and then to write about it, and to write about it, then to talk about it, and then to talk about it, and then to integrate it. Because otherwise, the stuff that we're reading is just frivolous. It just doesn't. It has no impact other than you can say that was a really good book. Yeah, but did it impact your life? Did it change the way you view the world? Did it impact the way you treat yourself or the people around you? Did you course correct because of something invaluable that you read, or was it just a really interesting idea that had no depth to it? And I think and that's again that falls under the same heading as the start and never complete. And again, you want to think about what the cost is to ourselves to not finishing what we started. And I remember, I remember this very clearly when I was in when I was in Nicaragua with my son, and part of the goal for us being there was to get him to do volunteer work, teach English at one of the schools there, and of course we'd walk, and we walk on this dirt trail, and it's either it's freaking hot out or it's raining, but it's muggy, and we'd walk on this dirt trail on the same little path, and maybe it's about a mile or so away, and and after about a month or so, like your clothes smell, and you're never dry. It's always so humid, and the walk gets a bit arduous, and and it's not, and you're in a developing country, and the kids at the school don't really care, and the materials are all kind of broken and misused, and nobody's all that interested. So your idea is going down and change the world, getting it crashed pretty quick because nobody's all that enthused because parents didn't really care, the kids didn't really care. Um, so it became one of these things where it felt yeah, what's the word? It felt kind of useless, because you had all these high hopes, and then of course they were dashed because what you expected you would be able to do, you had to lower your standards by a whole lot. But I remember walking along the path, and I went to one school, and then I probably walked another couple kilometers to the next school, and it's hot and it's dirty, and I'm wearing freaking sandals, and there's rocks on the road, and I'm tired, and and the heat's bearing down on me. Like I said, we're 6 weeks or so into being there. My son said, "I'm not going." He had freaking had it, and I'm walking along, and I'm just plodding along, and I just and I remember kind of thinking to myself, I know I don't want to do this, and I could be anywhere else. I could just sit back at the compound and drink a cold beer and not care. But I said I was going to do this, so I want to fucking do this. And what is the cost of me not to do this? What is going to cost? What is it going to cost me just to say I give up? And I just well, whatever. It's not worth it. And I was more afraid and more worried about the consequences of not going to the school and doing the mundane things we were doing. I mean, I don't. What we weren't having the effect we wanted to have. Maybe that was just pride and maybe selfishness on our part. That we thought we'd be, we changed the world and people would just be wowed. I don't know what we're thinking, but whatever the expectation was, we weren't meeting it. But we played with the kids, and and again the rooms are dirty, and nobody really cared, and we're trying to fix and clean. But I just remember making that walk, and again it was a bit of a hike, and just saying to myself, the cost of me to not do this would be far greater than me just sucking up and making the trek down this dirty path through the jungle. And it kind of stuck with me, and it just it's one of these things like how much can I endure, and how much am I willing to just grind it out to get it done. And it's not for the completion. It's not because it wasn't for the actual completion of the task. I was more afraid of developing the habit of quitting, and I was more afraid of that because I knew the impact we were going to make was minimal, because there's just so much work to be done. And but it was the act. I wasn't going to let myself stop, and just go back to the compound and have a beer and say be done with it, because I said I would. And it was it was an interesting dialogue that I had in my head, that I said I would do this. And I'm going to do this, because if I can't show discipline in these simple things, relatively simple mundane things, I will never accomplish anything of any grandeur. There's no way in the world, because I don't have the habit. And I remember when I was growing up as a kid, we were living in a fairly religious, Bible based household. And of course, I remember all these stories, and I was teaching Bible studies when I was probably 11 years old as a kid in church. But I remember that there was a story of the talents, right? It was a parable of the talents, and the talents were talents of gold. There was, let's say, pieces of gold, and and there was and it was a story of being of kind of what was the story I was thinking about? Actually, that's not even it. It was the wrong one. Okay, so I'm going to have to. My brain grabbed onto an idea and it completely brain farted it. So I'm going to come back to that. but it's but the reason why I got on this tangent to begin with, other than that little mental deviation, I may have had a stroke there, was that it was that fear of not following through got me to, in this period of time that we're in now, to follow through on again finishing this yoga course. I decided last year that I was going to um, I wanted to understand neurology better, right? I wanted to get a little bit more deeply immersed into neuroscience, and I figured, that would be interesting because it's part of my curiosity, and so maybe I would enroll in a university course. So I enrolled in university to study medical neuroscience, and when I started getting into it, actually, what I was interested in, because I hadn't contemplated the fact that there's going to be so many different branches to it, and what I was more interested in, was the neuroscience and around memory, and I hadn't even thought about the fact that we have so many different branches of it. So what I'm kind of so I started, and then I got bogged down by chemistry, and because that was my strong point, and then I put it on the back, I put it on the shelf, and just hadn't looked at it for a while. And then I became frustrated with myself. I said, even though the stuff I'm going through is challenging, and understand this process, it's challenging, and it's not exactly what I wanted. It wasn't what I expected. But I'm going to follow through and finish the bloody course anyhow. One, because I'm going to learn something, right? I'm going to finally learn a little bit more about chemistry and become a little bit better at that. Um, but it will enable me to trust myself. I guess is to trust my own judgment, trust the fact that when I do something, I will follow through and see it through to the end. And in this environment that we're in, it just we have tremendous opportunity to kind of clean up all those things that are kind of unfinished, whether they're aspects of our history, going back, and whether it's our physical health, whether it's stuff in our finances, like where's the unfinished business? It's kind of funny, the idea around poltergeist, or around ghost, and poltergeist kind of are supposed to be floating around, because why? And all these ghost stories that we see in movies, it's just it's unfinished business. They can't leave this world because of things they haven't done. And I also believe that when we reach that point in time in life where it's our time to depart, how we depart, the degree of happiness or misery that we display at our exit time, I think is completely consistent with the amount of things that are left undone, right? The amount of things that I did not follow through on. So I'm trying to check all my boxes here, so because at some point in time I'm going to be leaving this planet, and I want to check all those boxes to make sure that, okay, as I go through, I don't want a bunch of incompletes. It's kind of like, when you're operating your computer, if you have too many tabs up, you have too many things open, you're running out of RAM, and you can't operate, and your computer kind of bogs down. It's kind of that way when you have a whole bunch of incompletes. So make a list of incompletes, from top to bottom, and then, hey Julie, and then start with the easiest thing to finish, and then work your way down to the hardest, right? And write the list, write a comprehensive list, and just find what's the easiest thing to get right off, to check off your list and complete it, and then celebrate the fact that you freaking did it, and then go on to the next one and complete that one, and then write that off. And what you'll find is that it's kind of like, I get this when I clean my office, like, it's not so bad, but I came in here a couple of weekends ago, and I really put some effort in cleaning it. I just left it until it drove me crazy. And then I cleaned my office, and I had a space for everything. And when I was done, it was just amazing. Like, I had this, like, how I felt mentally, like psychologically, I felt amazing, right? I wanted to be in my office, and now it's just there's a few things scattered around, but it just, there's such a powerful feedback mechanism when we follow through and get stuff done. Same thing with our fitness, right? There's quotes out there you'll see all the time, and the quotes really speak to. Says, if you want to get in shape, stop quitting. somebody when I was at Costco. It was quite a few years ago, and this young guy, he was in the lane next to me when we could actually talk to people, and he looks over, he's going, "Dude," he said, "Man, dude, you're jacked." He said, "Like, hey, well, how'd you do that?" And I said, "Well, about 20 years ago, I started training, and I didn't quit." Right? That's the story, right? People say, "Well, man, like, it's just how do you remember so much stuff? How do you're always coming up with things, and people ask you a question, you have all these things you're pulling out of your head." So, well, when about 23 years ago, 24 years ago, maybe, I read something. It was Brian Tracy that said, if you read a book a week, if you read a book every week on a particular topic and around your particular, genre or business or interest, you'd be like a leading expert in 10 years. Well, I don't think I read a book a week, but I read every day for almost 23 years. And it's not that I have a high degree of intelligence. It's just, but if you put enough stuff in here, you're going to figure some stuff out, right? If you read and think and read and think and read and think on various topics, and you kind of get enthused by it, eventually you're going to know a thing or two, right? Googling doesn't make you smarter. Googling is kind of makes us lazy. Even when I have a spell check, when I'm spell checking things, when I'm trying to type something, and if a word comes up and I'm not sure the correct spelling of the word, and the iPhone figures it out for me, or Grammarly figures it out for me, I'll stop, even though it corrects the word. I'll look, and then I'll make sure I look at the correct spelling of the word rather than just skipping along, because I want to learn, right? I want to imprint that in my brain. But I'll tell you, it just there's so much stuff. The things that have been gone really well for me over the years are caused pretty much by and far by me following through, studying and applying myself and being consistent and day in, day out, week in, year in, year out, until I achieved a certain level, to my satisfaction of whatever it might be that I was looking for. And almost to the letter, the things that have taken me out, the things that have caused me the most grief in my life, were the things I never followed through on. And that might be not following through on what you were supposed to say, right? Necessary conflict, or just projects or things that I just never followed through on. Didn't call my accountant in time. Didn't want to deal with CRA around taxes, right? Just whatever it might be. But the things I avoid always come back to haunt me. The things I lean into and get done, I always find that part of my life unfolds beautifully. You'd think I'd figured it out by now. Anyhow, just my little Friday rant and ramble. I hope you guys are being safe out there, and hope that this very bizarre time in history hasn't made you too weird. Even though that there's lots of, even though I think there's lots of challenges that are coming out of this for people, or challenges we're actually walking through right now, I really do think that if we're honest with ourselves. And this is the time to be, for myself as well, that we can emerge from this space really, I think, so much self-aware, so much more powerful. And it's kind of like, and we can prune off what's unnecessary and kind of useless. We can leave what needs to be left behind. How much of our life do we continue? How much of our life do we keep ourselves busy so that we don't have to face what we need to face? And how much of that is coming back to kind of sit with us because we have nowhere to go? All right. And I think that's the challenge a lot of us will have, and myself on certain levels, like, 'cause I have to come face to face with myself. Because I have more time with myself, and I can't run out and be distracted. I can get distracted by study and by work, and through exercise, and get lost in social media, and say I'm just out there working. I'm writing articles, but to really take more time to contemplate on what I need to leave behind. And you see some really great quotes on this. Is that we don't want things to go back to normal, because normal wasn't working on any level. And so it's going to be exciting to see what we can create on the other side of it. It's just and can we keep the conversation going long since the reason why we started has been forgotten? That makes sense. Can we keep up? It's I did this. I started writing this article, and my hashtag was never going back, right? Never going back. But there's a. I'll finish off with this, and I welcome your ideas beyond the video here. Um, I had this analogy, and I call it "ass to the flame syndrome." And "ass to the flame syndrome" simply refers to this. We have currently, let's say you're facing that way, and your ass is on a flame. So here's a candle, and your ass is on that flame. Are you uncomfortable? Yes, absolutely, extremely uncomfortable. So what the discomfort does, it actually forces you to move, right? It forces some forward momentum. So discomfort, whatever that might be, fear or anger or what have you, it'll get you moving, right? So your ass is on the flame, so you move away from the flame because it's uncomfortable. But what happens when you're further away from the flame? Does it hurt as much? Well, no. Okay, so what happens? Well, what happens that now that you're comfortable and the pain has gone away, the motivation stops, right? Because we're using the painful experience to move us forward. So over time, what ends up happening is that we simply go back and put our ass back on the flame again, and now we're uncomfortable. So what we call negative emotions aren't really negative, and they call them below the line emotions. And I don't believe they're even below the line emotions. I just think they're emotions, and they have a story to tell. It's just being lousy interpreters of our own internal experience, I think, is the issue, right? So if your ass is on the flame and you're uncomfortable, that's great because you're being told to wake up, right? And when I'm uncomfortable and I'm wrestling with something, I had something the other day which showed me that I wasn't as calm as I thought I was because I lost my shit, and it wasn't good. But I lost my temper on some young guys that were partying next door, and I felt so ugly around. I go, wow, that was just terrible. I'm not like that, but man, I was one angry human being. So yeah, so this compartmentalization compression has affected me more than I thought. But nevertheless, but what I'm referring to is that when you have these emotions that feel negative inside of you, they're asking you to wake up and look around. It's your ass is on the flame. So use the negative emotions to force you to take stock of where you're at, and then decide. I know I feel this way. It's not that this is the experience I'm stuck with. It's just asking me. It's just telling me this is where I currently am, whether just an experience, my internal experience, or my physical reality. But then I have a choice. Then the choice is, okay, if I don't wish to feel like this way continuously, can I cast a vision in front of me and then live to the vision? So the negative affect, right? The negative emotions or the challenging emotions wakes us up. And then in that moment of wokeness, right? It's the term, being a woke person. I think it's a bit egocentric, but we're supposed to be woken up, and the world is been shaken up a bit. So ideally, if we're shaken up, it should wake us up, and then we cast a vision on, okay, this isn't good currently. What's going on? It's not good for all of us. So what is the better option? And we cast a vision forward to a much better place that we want to be, and we never lose sight of that vision. And the objective is to keep that in our mind's eye, right? And a lot of the old stories, even the old story of Pinocchio. I remember that was such a and Pinocchio is actually a really, really, really old story. But the idea of cast your vision, wish upon a star, right? Cast your vision on the brightest point in the sky. And it's kind of what we need to do is cast our vision on a very bright point in the sky, set a high vision for ourselves on the other side of this. And the way to calibrate, awesome, Jolene. And the way to calibrate your vision, for me, the way that I was taught, I think, and I was taught through the material that I read, and it really resonated with me. And to calibrate your vision to make sure that it's what's we're looking for. It's good for the environment, right? It's ecologically sound, right? because we're part of an ecosystem, right? We're humans, but we are nature. And the challenge is we are nature trying to observe itself, which is, of course, kind of a contrary point of view because I don't think it actually works very well, right? So it's way too subjective. But since we're part of nature, right, because we have to realize that we need to function symbiotically with nature, right, and with the natural world. The things that we consider outside of us, but really we're just a part of it because we're basically made from the dirt. So whatever I decide to do going forward in the rest of 2020 and life beyond, it has to be good for me, right? And that's not all about me, but it has to be good for me. It means I need to thrive. I want to thrive financially. I want to thrive physically. I want to thrive emotionally. I want to thrive, psychologically. I want to thrive romantically. I want to thrive on all different levels, right? I want to be a thriving human being. Okay. And I think that's, it's okay. It's a really good thing to wish for, right? And aim for. But if it's good for me, the second piece to look at, and the way to kind of check and measure, is it good for the people in my intimate circle? So if it's good for me, does it automatically have a beneficial effect around the people that are closely connected to me? And so that's something else to check out. Good for me, it's good for my loved ones. And if it's good for me, it's good for my loved ones. And then if I extend a bit further, is it good for my community at large? It's good for me, it's good for my loved ones, good for the community at large. And then I keep pushing the idea forward. So it's good for me, it's good for my loved ones, good for the community at large, good for my country, and of course it's systemically good for the world as well. And the interesting way of looking at it, and the reason why I do that, is that it makes sure that it reduces the risk of me looking at things in a very linear point of view that are very self-serving, and realizing that it just I'm not yes, I'm a Canadian and I love living in Canada. I think it's a great country. I won the prize for being born here on many different levels. However, I don't want to be nationalistic. I want to be humanistic, right? I want to think of myself more as a human rather than just a Canadian, right? Being nationalistic pride comes with its own problems. So, because I don't want to be proud to be a Canadian, and I'm fortunate to be a Canadian. Let's put it that way. I'm fortunate to be here. Am I proud to be Canadian? I'm not sure, but I'm fortunate to be here, right? And I'm extremely grateful for the country I was born in. My son and I are watching a movie tonight, and it was just a movie that took place in India. And it just said, I looked at him and said, we won the luck of the draw, being born in such a beautiful place, a beautiful country. So, but anyhow, it just I don't know. I want to talk about this stuff, and I'm not allowed to talk to anyone within 6 feet, right? So I'm having these conversations this way, right? This is my social distancing conversation because I don't have a lot of people that to talk to here locally that I can do this with, right? Anyhow, but thanks for hanging out with me in my ramblings, and I've got a bit of coloring to do. I've got my neuroscience coloring book. And currently I'm coloring neurotransmitter release. Very exciting. Synaptotegmin, axons, myelin sheaths, the morphology of a synapse in the central nervous system, very exciting. Metabotropic, ionic and metabotropic receptors, I was studying that the other day. That was pretty interesting. Ligand-gated channels. We are freaking amazing, right? I love everything about the world. I love the complexity. I love just the intricacy of what we are. And man, if you're alive and you're breathing, right, and you can see, and you can, if you have no gratitude for what you live in, you are out of your freaking mind, right? If you're destroying this thing, you are insane. That you would just we are so amazing. When I said I would shut up, but of course I'm not, obviously. When I first started studying neuroscience, when I got when I got deeper into it, it actually made me feel a little bit weird. It made me, I didn't feel very good actually for a couple of weeks when I was reading it, because it made me feel, I don't know, I've got a very creative mind, and I was imagining all these things inside of me, and these, millions of neurons and these support cells, glial cells, and just all these reuptake transmitters, and it made me feel just a bit bizarre. Like I didn't feel, I I don't know, I didn't feel like a human anymore. I felt like this giant science experiment with a face. It was very odd. It didn't, yeah, it wasn't. I didn't enjoy it for 2 weeks. I felt a bit off, because when we got into the complexity of what we are just a freaking miracle. Oh man, like it's just the stuff that goes on, um, and why we would willingly want to destroy this thing through just through silly habits. Like I smoked for 15 years, so I understand the challenges of leaving an old lifestyle. But man, we are such a gift, extraordinary gift. And yeah, I think it's just, I think we just need to wake up in awe of the fact that you can look out and I can see colors, and I can feel textures, and I can hear sounds, and I can articulate words, and I can think thoughts, and we don't even know what a thought is. And I can imagine things, and we don't even know how that happens, right? It's extraordinary. Like it's just, and we we're just millions and millions and millions of cells, not to mention the microbiota that lives inside of us that outnumber our the cells of our body. Like it's so bizarre. It's just such a miracle that this is what we are, and yet um, we take it for granted. It's such a shame, because we're a miracle. It's incredible. Anyhow, on that note, that philosophical romanticizing of neurology note, I will leave you guys and bid you a good night and have a great weekend. And yeah, I'll see you next time I'm out here to rant.